quorum. Is there a motion to open the December 6th, 2021 Sag Harbor School Board of Education meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second? Great. Mary, please open up the voting.
What that noise is?
I just heard that. Sounds like a woodpecker in your house, Sandy.
Oh, my bad. Okay.
Is Chris Tice on board?
Could be coming.
Okay.
We had so many, we had trouble with getting on and off Zooms tonight, so.
Ryan, I don't see your vote.
Oh, I said yes.
We got a vote.
Yes. Okay. That's unanimous.
Great. Please join me now for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, great. Let's proceed to section 3 of tonight's agenda, the public input. If anybody attending this evening would like to address the board or make a statement, now would be the time to do that. Please raise your hand or put your question into the chat box. If you raise your hand, we will call upon you and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board. With that, are there any hands?
Do not see any.
Give everybody one more minute. Okay, I don't see any hands, and I don't see any questions in the chat room. So we will proceed to the superintendent's report at this time. Mr. Nichols.
Thank you, Brian. I'm going to cover 2 issues tonight. The first is an update on our ongoing discussions and the plan moving forward for Massachusetts Park and the school district. And before I start, we had sent out an invite to the president of the park board, Janine Rayano, and I don't know if she signed on as a panel.
She is. I see Janine. I see her here.
So she's here.
Yes.
So anyway, I just want to recognize Janine because along with other park board members, they've played a pivotal role in all of the work that's been done over the last couple of months. And we've been working collaboratively and collegially, and I just want to thank her for that and her fellow park board members. So I'll provide an overview and then Janine can sort of chime in because we were supposed to do this together, or we intend to do it together. So I'd like to start with just a history of the relationship between the school district and Massachusetts. I've been in the district since 1996, and for all of those years, Pearson has played the majority of their interscholastic matches at Massachusetts Park, whether it's baseball, cross country, soccer, field hockey. Obviously, the indoor events like volleyball and basketball are played on site, but we've been very, very lucky to have that relationship, to have such a grand space within the confines of the village of Sag Harbor. We've enjoyed a really good relationship with the park. Beginning a couple of years ago, we being the school district, started to become concerned about some of the conditions of specific parts of the park. And some of those concerns were safety related. Some of those concerns were just facility in general related. And I made the point to the park board, the people that we met with, that it was sort of analogous to when I came to Pearson in the mid to late 90s. The facility, the Pearson High School, was this wonderful, beautiful building with a ton of history and very charming. But in terms of its, the facility, it really was not what other schools around us had. We didn't have a lunchroom. We didn't have laboratories and science rooms. We didn't have a library, or at best we had a makeshift library. So at that time, the school district went out, my predecessors, Bob Schneider, John Barnes, old board members did a lot of work, and we improved the facility greatly in and around the turn of the century. And I think that in some ways we're sort of faced with the same kind of issue with the park. We've got this grand old facility. It's beautiful, but there are parts that need to be refurbished and brought up to current standards. So this past spring, in thinking about a way to do it, we got together with the park board and came up with a solution, which is basically that the school district would sign a 1-year lease with the idea that eventually in year 2, we would sign a long-term lease, a minimum of 25 years, and that in concert with the park, we would plan for significant renovations that both parties agreed to, and those renovations would result in the facility being brought up to the level that both of us want, both for the students and for the community. So that was news this summer that we signed the 1-year lease. And then beginning in September, we've met with Janine and 4 or 5 of her fellow park board members, for the most part on a weekly basis. And the focus of those meetings has been to try to agree upon things that we would like included in the renovation, and to think about ways to make that happen without interfering with what we all love about the park, which is the sense of history, the aesthetic feel, all of those things. And those meetings have been very, very productive. And I would be remiss if I didn't add that in addition to those meetings, these park board members who we have been meeting with have been going back to the park board and really doing a lot of work on the side, researching additional information. So to Janine and all her fellow board members, I really appreciate all of that. So where are we at right now? Where we're at is we have a general template in terms of what we envision the renovation plan including. And I'll do my best to summarize those renovations, knowing that not all of them will be in there, but our attempt is to pretty much get as close as we can. So our goal at this point is to have 2 full baseball diamonds. And when I say the goal is to have them, that would be refurbishing the existing diamond and adding another one so that the field is level, the backstops are new, the fences are new, the dugouts are new, any related electrical upgrades are made. 2 softball fields. One of them right now, the park has done a wonderful job of renovating. That one would stay in place, but we would build an additional one of similar quality, again, with all new infrastructure around it in terms of fences and backstops and dugouts and all that kind of stuff. 1 Little League field, because we realize that that is important to the community. A big item that we would like to include is a full-size track, which would benefit our students immensely. Right now, our students travel to East Hampton, and we're thankful for that relationship, but it would be great to have something at Mashashanuit for our students, and that would benefit our cross-country program as well as our potentially a track program here at Pearson. And inside of that field or the track would be a playing field of natural grass, and additional soccer and field hockey fields to accommodate those 2 sports, related lighting, potentially for evening games. And it's been pointed out to us that the advancements in electrical lighting permit lighting to take place without significantly impacting neighbors because the technology has advanced so much. Seating, other infrastructure upgrades, which I've mentioned already, and those would include plumbing and electrical for future improvements, perhaps a concession stand, and the location of that is currently being discussed. Bathrooms, and when I say bathrooms, both the upgrade of existing bathrooms and the addition of additional bathrooms so that they're in multiple locations. And so that's pretty much where we're at. And what the park board and the school have been meeting about is trying to come up with what that layout looks like, because the layout has to consider the environment in terms of not unnecessarily disrupting any of the green belt around. And so we've been very thoughtful with regard to how we're proceeding in a very measured way. So the park board is very close to finalizing what those designs are going to look like. And then I think the next question that someone asked is, well, what's the path forward once those designs are put into place, or once those designs are settled on? And the path forward is that the school district would then take those designs that the park board has come up with in consultation with us, send them to the school district architect, who's quite familiar with what needs to be included in submissions to the state for approval, and reformat those plans, probably a lot of tweaks here and there, but nothing that would in a substantial way interfere with the original design. Send them to the state, get approval from the state, and then the intention would be for the school district to then go out to the public for a bond referendum to raise the funds to complete the renovations. And that timeline, you know, in a perfect world, we would be shooting for bringing that referendum to the public at the time of our budget vote, which would be in May. That timeline is very tight, and we're shooting for it, but everyone should know that with regulatory approvals and reviews, any delay could result in us having to go out to the public at a later time, whether it's a month after that or 2 months, we're not sure yet. But again, we're hoping for a May vote at this time. So that's sort of a summary of everything to date. The hope is in concluding that we have something to share with the public in terms of visuals and the design sooner rather than later. I know that the park board, the people that we've been meeting with have been working, I don't want to say round the clock, but they've been working very hard to try to make this happen. So with that, Janine, if you're listening, you know, feel free to chime in with any additional comments. I hope I've summarized everything adequately.
Yes, you have. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can.
We can
Okay,
see you.
great.
And
And
yeah,
can you hear me as well?
we can.
Yes.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me this evening. I don't want to repeat anything that Jeff Nichols has already said, and said very nicely. And, you know, I think it definitely has been a cooperative effort to try to find out whether or not, and we have been working together to come up with a design of improvements to the park's fields that will satisfy the athletic program at Pearson and also serve the community. Well, one of the things I'd like to say is that it's a pretty ambitious timeline, and everyone, the school board and the park board, has been working towards, you know, trying to meet that. And there's not a day that doesn't go by that we think about trying to find a way to do that. There have been many professionals that have given their time, whether it's school board people, park board relationships, who have given their time to try to make this happen. So I want to make sure that at the end of this, maybe not today, but they'll be thanked. And their work has been, you know, very well received. One of the things is that, you know, Sag Harbor has grown. The school, population has grown, and the population of the community. So we're hopeful that this particular type of development at the park will serve everyone. And maybe it's, a stroke of luck that we're doing it now, because there does seem to be sort of a tipping point. We would feel terrible as the park board, and I think the community, if for any reason at all, the school's athletic sports, outdoor events could not be held within the village. And, I think that, we've felt a lot of the community outreach to us during the period of time we were trying to come to an agreement this summer. And we were all very happy that we were able to satisfy all of our needs, being that we've continued to have the sports at the park for, our school population, and that the school and the park were able to find the time to meet on a regular basis. I do believe everyone would say we have meaningful discussions, and that those discussions have been, fruitful. And I join, Mr. Nichols with applauding the school in all their efforts they have been to support the park board, knowing that we are of limited financial means and have given us every opportunity to share in their resources as well, in an effort to investigate the proper and perfect, hopefully, design of our park that we'll be able to do. In addition, we also have to keep in mind our community and our neighbors, and to be true to the vision of Mrs. Russell Sage, who not only did she gift the park to the community, but built the school and all the other things that we see around us that are of particular interest to Sag Harbor and the surrounding community. I'm glad to say that the park is feeling that this is going to be a successful project, and we're just looking forward to working together to bring it to fruition. I don't think there's anything else I could add to what Mr. Nichols said. Jeff, do you think I left anything out?
No, I think you did a very eloquent job of explaining sort of where we're at.
Okay, you too.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Before we let you go, and any board members have any questions or any comments with respect to the park update before we move on?
I just want to say that, being born and raised here, so knowing what the park always was and wants to be, that we are really working together to keep that and yet bring it into 2021. And together, it's been a great collaborative effort between all of us. And it's been a great experience. So I can't wait to get the plans to people once they get them finalized and we get going and get this passed. And it's going to be awesome. So I just want to say it's great being a part of it. And thanks to Jeff and Janine for constantly keeping us on track in all our meetings and everybody else. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Sandy, for your support.
Always.
I have a couple questions, and I want to thank everybody involved, particularly the park board, like the board here. You're volunteers, and so all the extra time you're putting into that is not unnoticed, and it's very appreciated. So thank you. I have two questions. One is, when would the plan need to be solidified in order for the vote to happen coincide with the budget vote in May? I know that there's a lead time that we have to have everything kind of published and locked, and done. Is that in March?
Well,
That's Jennifer.
Well, I think that the answer is a little more complicated than, I think there are several answers to the question.
Okay.
Jennifer can speak to the deadline with regard to submitting language and things like that. Jennifer, you want to weigh in with that? I think it's 90 days.
So our drop dead date for public notice to the community is April 1st. So we would really need to have all the proposition language settled by April 1st. And then this way it can be included at the May 17th budget vote. And basically the biggest piece we would need to know is the dollar amount. So the community would be approving bonds being borrowed in that specific dollar amount. So that's what we need to do. But unfortunately, as Mr. Nichols said, there's a lot of other steps involved before we even get to that point.
So the other things, when I said it was a multi-layered answer, and perhaps you knew that when you asked the question, is that there's regulatory processes and review processes that we have to go through that contain different timelines dependent upon the ultimate plan that's settled on. And those are environmental studies and things like that. Know that the architect for the school district who works with H2M attended a meeting and sort of laid out those guidelines to both sides. So we're aware of those. And I think those deadlines and those dates, and they're sort of motivating us to move as quickly as we can. And that's why I mentioned that the members of the park board committee that we're dealing with have been doing an awful lot of work outside of our meetings trying to move this along.
Thank you. And then my second question is, in terms of the process, is it going to be presented to the public once the design is finalized? Or is there going to be a step where, we're like 95% of the way there, here's where we think we're going to end up, to have the public have the ability to provide us with some feedback? And I know this is a little different than when we're doing bond projects on our own campus, where we have that process where we do kind of get that public feedback. So I didn't know if that was built into this, or because it's at a different site, it's going to be handled differently.
My take, Janine, feel free if you want to weigh in, but my take is that it's going to be different than a typical bond referendum where you invite the public input. I think it's a little bit of a lesser degree of that, to the extent that it's not the school property per se. It's the park board who's in charge of it. And although, they're open-minded and all those things, we have been working with them, and our role in the whole thing has really been to articulate to the park board what are the school district needs in terms of the athletic program. And then it's really within their purview. And again, they've been great with us to include us in the design, but it's ultimately their decision as to what they move forward with. Janine, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And just, Chris, if I just maybe amplify a little bit, knowing the park and our concerns for not just the needs of the school, but the needs of the community and our neighbors and what happens on our site. So in that regard, I think it's going to be a more complete sort of take it or leave it type of plan, where there might be public input, but I don't know if it's going to be, even if there'll be enough time to have them, even if we wanted to have some sort of a comment, to even have that feedback if we're trying to meet this sort of ambitious timeline. Am I right, Jeff?
You're correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. I wasn't lobbying for it to be different. I think it's just helpful to be as transparent with the public about it, so that their expectations are set properly. That they're not
agree.
anticipating to have some big workshop where everyone can stand up and say, no, this is the field I want here. That's kind of not the process that anyone should expect to be unfolding. So.
Yeah, well, that's why we've been trying to work as transparent as we can between ourselves, so that the school knows its interest and the park knows what it wants. And hopefully at the end of the day, our interest will serve everyone. We're always going to have unhappy people, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to be, I think we can all go to bed at night and know that it was a very well thought out, and we tried to consider everyone's interest and whoever would be impacted. I'm hoping that, people will grow to appreciate that, even those that may not agree with everything that's being done. But I think under the circumstances, if you take a look around at other school districts and other places, if the community, and I do believe they do, want to support the school's athletic program, that these fields, while they may be, fine for what we're doing with them, if we want to continue that, and we think the population will grow or at least stay the same, and we think that the level of competitiveness of our teams wants to, be risen to a different level, then I think the park has to play a part in developing the fields to match that need, and of course balance everything. So I think we've all been, said some of the same things in a lot of different ways, but I think this particular year has been, I don't know, very important, I think, in the park and school relationship. For a number of things, whether it's the COVID situation, but a lot of things have culminated to get us to this spot. The school's kind enough, I do believe, to open their pocketbook and say, park board, these are the things we want, and we're willing to work with you to get them. I think that that's a gift, and I think that the park board is very appreciative of it. And we think that if we work with the right professionals and think things through and try to at least anticipate what the opposition might be, so that we can satisfy those questions, because I think people oppose things they're not familiar with. But I think that in the end, this community will be well served by the development of it, whatever it might be, because certainly it's going to be better than what it is now, and hopefully it will definitely serve the needs of the athletic community for the Pearson students. So I'm excited. I'm tired, but I'm excited, and it has been fun. It's hard work, but that's what makes it, worth it, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah, and just to say, we put out our term sheet. the park board, and we all agreed on it, and we are working collaboratively. That was put out to the public, and that's what we're working collaboratively with the park board to do. And like I said, to keep it modern, but yet keep it to what Mrs. Sage's vision was. And we are succeeding at that. And we are confident that what we present to the public is going to be the best it can be. And I really feel, I mean, I was on the park board 18 years ago. And I'm gonna tell you, from then till now, we are light years, and we are just have an amazing relationship going. And I just want to see it keep going forward the way it is. And I think we're doing that. So thanks, Janine.
Oh, no, thank you, Sandy.
And Brian, just real quick, if I could just chime in, just because I've been working on the committee, just want to thank Janine and everyone on the park board. You know, still a lot of work to do, and obviously it's subject to approval from the public, but it's really, I think, a wonderful opportunity to, you know, to take this beautiful asset here in Sag Harbor and just upgrade some of the facilities. And I think it's going to be a wonderful thing for the school district and whole community. And it really credit to Janine and the rest of the park board. And so I just want to say thanks.
Well, Alex, if you all don't mind, I'd like to at least name my committee members. So
Absolutely.
our committee is
Sure.
Greg Schiavone, Mimi Yardley, Mary Churchill, and Rachel D. And, you know, we're working together. And so I just want to thank those people individually and collectively, because I certainly
Eddie
couldn't be
Hay,
sitting here without them.
I think you forgot Eddie Hay.
Oh, sorry, Ed Hay. Ed, I didn't mean it.
He's probably on another call. Okay.
All right, great. Thank you all. Jeff, if we can go back to 5.1, the COVID update.
Thanks, Janine.
Thank you, Janine.
Okay, thank you. Good night, everyone.
You're more than welcome to stay on with us, but
Yeah,
I might click back on, but I'm gonna take
Another
a call.
meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Brian, and thanks, Jeanine. I just want to provide a quick update related to COVID. We had some parent questions with regard to notification protocols. In other words, if we have a situation in the school where a student or a staff member, but let's talk students for the purposes of this discussion, a student tests positive, how do we go about notifying parents? And the concerns coming from some parents basically asked if we could be more specific with regard to our notification. So as it stands right now, when a student tests positive for COVID, we send notification out by school. So if the student is an elementary school student, we break it down and say an elementary school student tested positive for COVID. The same thing with middle school, high school, or the Sag Harbor Learning Center. And some of the parents were requesting that we do it by grade level. And in answer to those questions, know that the school district wrestled with this issue going back to the very beginning of the pandemic. And in consultation with our school attorneys, we really had to consider FERPA, which is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, which came into play in the mid-70s. And basically, they have a document, and that document, which came out, I believe, in 2020, is a question and answer piece addressing FERPA as it relates to COVID. And with regard to notification practices, it says caution that the United States Department of Education and their privacy department cautions educational agencies or institutions to ensure that in releasing such facts, those facts being positive COVID results, they do so in a manner that does not disclose other information that alone or in combination would allow a reasonable person in the school community to identify the students who are absent due to COVID with reasonable certainty. So what that means is that in a small school like ours, where you have 60 or 70 students at a grade level, sometimes it's a little less, sometimes it's a little more, drilling it down, that notification into grade level, really runs afoul of FERPA and the guidance that I just read, because to some degree, a reasonable person could find out or determine who tested positive. Larger schools where they have 200, 300, or 400 kids in a class, that's a different ball of wax. But again, in consultation with our attorneys, we're not really permitted to do that and maintain privacy as per FERPA. Now, what parents should know is that in every instance where we have a case where we have questions and or concerns, we do call the Department of Health, and the Department of Health being the Suffolk County Department of Health. And in special circumstances, for instance, where we might have more than one case in a particular class, the Suffolk County Department of Health then guides us with specific steps that we should take. So within the last week or two, there was one class where there was more than one case, and the Suffolk County Department of Health directed us to, or advised us to, make a call to every parent in that class, in that specific classroom, and make them aware that someone tested positive, so that they could take the necessary steps to ensure that their child was safe, whether it was vis-a-vis testing or that kind of thing. So that's the summary. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Did you have just to clarify for anyone listening, our policy has not changed since the beginning of COVID. It's just, and sometimes the advice we are given from the Department of Health changes in every situation. So it's not a one size fits all. The department and the school has checked with the Department of Health on every occasion.
They do. We consistently check with the Department of Health. If we have a particular student, like one student in a grade level who tests positive, we don't consult with the Department of Health regarding that. But if there's more than one student who tests positive in a class, we would put in a call to the Department of Health. And at all times, we are following their protocols. And my comments at the beginning, when we first had COVID arrive, it's, I guess, over 2 years ago, or about that, we wrestled with this notification issue at that time with regard to FERPA and how to navigate it. And that interpretation of FERPA and how we should proceed has not changed from the spring of 2019, based on our size and our belief that drilling it down with more specificity could potentially compromise confidentiality.
Thank you. I'm going to first open it up to the board if there are any questions, board questions for Mr. Nichols, clarifications or questions.
I just wanted to add that the push and pull between public health and individual protected information is not only related to COVID. So before the pandemic, so I've gotten a few questions from parents recently that were talking about the same issue that Mr. Nichols has been talking about, asking about the process. And they say, oh, but we used to get notifications if there was a kid that had pink eye or strep. That actually stopped a long time ago. So for folks that remember that, there was a shift, and that had to do with FERPA and to us relooking at our policies at that time. So I just want to bring up that it is analogous. And if you're wondering why it's different, it's just because everything changed a while ago, and that was before the pandemic.
Thank you, Jordana. Any other board members for Mr. Nichols or comments? Jeff, I'm just going to open it up to see if there's anybody here specifically for that didn't make public input one. So if there's anybody here from the public that has a question for the board or Mr. Nichols with respect to the COVID-19 update, notification, or school policies, now would be the time to ask. Either put that question in the chat room or raise your hand and we will unmute you to address the board and or Mr. Nichols.
I'm not seeing any hands, and I do not see any posts to the chat room.
Okay. So with that, Mr. Nichols, if there's anything else, otherwise let's move on to the principal's report.
So we'll start with Mr. Malone. Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to start by just saying a big thank you to all who made our fall version of the parent-teacher conferences such a success. The 2 days leading up to the Thanksgiving recess, we let the students out early, and teachers invited parents and or family members to join them via Google Meet. And I believe these conferences were very productive and positive. And I've received a lot of great feedback from both our families and our teachers. So I just thank everybody for helping those go smoothly. We are wrapping up our first trimester at the elementary school. We break the year up into thirds. So we're closing out the first trimester in the next couple weeks. And then the first versions of the report cards will be posted to the portal, and an email will go out to families so they can review those. Of course, we're now in December, and December is always a busy time in the elementary school with some of our COVID restrictions. We're missing annual events such as our concerts and some of our shows, but I think our classes are doing a great job to keep the spirits high and do some festive things within their rooms, and the children are enjoying themselves. I do want to particularly point out a couple of our longstanding service projects are still going. We had a successful food drive prior to the Thanksgiving break. We're now in the middle of our Mitten Line, which is a great service project where families can support families in our community who could use a little extra help this time of year. And just the other day, two students, Marina Hollier, who's a senior at Pearson, and her younger sister, Nola, who I believe is in 10th grade, they returned to the elementary school. 7 years ago, they started a coat drive back when they were elementary students, and they returned just the other day to relaunch that coat drive. They built Buddy, the coat monster, and Buddy is in our main lobby collecting gently used jackets and coats, warm sweatshirts, and all those donations go to support the retreat here locally. So I thank the Hollier girls for
It's
bringing.
great.
Yes, great. It's good stuff.
Yeah. So I think that's the elementary update for now. I can answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Malone. Any questions from the board for Mr. Malone? Okay. Mr. Nichols.
Ms. Carriero, would you like to follow up?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I will be quick. The middle high school is busy. We started our second quarter as we work in quarters at the middle high school. Our students who applied ED will be hearing from their universities by the end of December, like 17th. And our students are also starting their applications for the early decision 2 process, as well as the regular decision process. So Ms. Motto, our college and career counselor, is working with our seniors and their families. A lot of our students actually have gotten in already through rolling admissions as well. Our fall play, Spotlight on the Town, will be being held this week, Thursday at 7 o'clock, Friday at 7 o'clock, and Saturday 2 to 4. There will be limited seating due to COVID restrictions. However, email Miss Loopy, and then email one out if you would like a seat. And just like Mr. Malone said, our music department had to shift due to COVID and having in-person concerts. So a lot of our music department is recording right now their holiday concert so that we can share what our students have been working on. So that's what's been going on in the middle high school. It's going pretty well.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Carriero. Any questions for Brittany from the board? Okay, great. Moving on to our consent agenda, and just to notify the public that we received the message in the chat box that indicated that Marina and Nola will be in the Express this Thursday on their coat drive. So can follow up and read about them in the Express this week. So that's great. Consent agenda. Is there a motion for consent agenda items 7.2 through 7.25?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I wanted to just bring up a couple of things related to the district and board goals.
Please.
I know when we first had our goals workshop in September 13th. And at that time, we did say we were going to come back and have another public discussion about them. So there's a couple of things that I just wanted to raise. And we did have a board workshop in the interim, which I think has helped inform some of the comments I'm going to make. And I support the goals that we're putting forth tonight. I would say that I would still advocate to do SMART goals. We have a history in this district of doing SMART goals, which is goals that are specific and are measurable and have some time frame to them. And in doing that, the reason why that's seen as best practices is because it is the most transparent way to do goal setting, because you're saying what specifically you're going to do and it's measurable and you'll know whether you've attained it or not. I am concerned that some of the goals that we have, both as district goals and as board goals, it would be very difficult to identify whether we actually achieve them this year, because they're so general. How do you know if you've achieved it or not? So I hope that, if the board does approve these goals, that we do look towards having specific discussions about tangible ways in which district is doing work to achieve those goals. So at least there is some level of accountability and much more transparency with the public. And that could just be that once these are approved, to say, okay, once a month, we're going to take a couple of these goals and give an update and say, here's the things that we're doing. It's not a huge presentation or workshop, but we are just kind of, linking, activity and efforts to goal achievement. The other thing is, in terms of the board goals, I would suggest, we did have some follow-up to our retreat. And even though it's not listed here as a goal, I would suggest that it be a goal of the board to do some of those activities. Some of them, as examples, were, and some of this came through the NYSBA moderator, but in some districts, they post a chain of command as an example. And in posting a chain of command, people then understand how to engage with who in the process of trying to get resolution or have questions asked. We've talked about doing a BOE events calendar, which is not the district events calendar, but here's the time in which we need to do X or Y, and having it calendarized just means that it's not organic. And then it's not, at the end of the year, we're going, oh, as an example, we won't do this, Mr. Nichols, but as an example, oh my gosh, our date to do the superintendent's evaluation is next week. We better hurry up and run. So we've talked about doing those kinds of things for a while. If they're not in our goals. And so I understand that if everybody wants to vote yes on these goals, they won't be included. But I'm just asking then that we have that to-do list and we tackle that in parallel. That's it.
No, I think that's smart, Chris. I think Jeff can put on his list to periodically update us on progress or information on the goals if they're to be adopted this evening. And I do think we did all discuss at the board retreat that, a calendar or something to that effect for board specific projects we would be putting up. So we will still continue to work to have that up before the end of the year. Any other board members for discussion on that or comment?
I'm just going to say that Mary did update a calendar for us and sent us all information on how to access it. Like the play, she has that taken care of, and moving forward, the concerts and everything else. So I think we did that. We could tighten it up a little bit more if Chris wants. And I do think that one of our goals was reported tonight, because one of it was on facilities and Jeff reported on the park. So I do think that we do that, and I think we should continue to work through those.
Thank you, Sandy. Anybody else? Okay. Mary, can you please open up the voting?
Okay,
Chris? Oh, I thought you were saying something, Chris. Sorry, I didn't want to do that before.
I'm exiting full screen so I can see
Okay.
the
You
screen to
got
vote.
closer, so I thought you were looking to ask. I'm sorry. It's
No,
the
I just have
medium.
bad eyesight. I'm older than you.
Okay.
By a
so-
few decades, actually, embarrassingly so.
No, not at all.
Okay, that's unanimous.
Great, thank you. Committee reports, Audit Committee. Anybody would like to give the public an update on the Audit Committee?
I think Sarah's on the call, actually. I think Sarah's was online.
I do see her. If we could
Yeah.
unmute Sarah, please.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, guys, because she's the chairperson.
Yep. Are you there, Sarah?
Yes, can everyone hear me?
We can, thank you.
Okay, excellent. Good evening, everyone. Just a quick update. We had an audit committee prior to this board meeting, and we just wanted to accept the risk assessment report from Naraki Smith that we reviewed today in our meeting.
Great. Anybody have any questions from the board on Audit Committee, or that seems to be?
No, we're gonna be meeting again probably before we put the report on, just because we got it. That's me, because we got it we didn't really have enough time to review it. So Sarah's gonna put together another meeting for us after we go through it with a fine tooth comb, and then we'll put it up to the board for the adoption. But there's nothing really glaring in it. Just we want to take a little bit more time and just dot our i's and cross our t's.
Perfect.
Okay.
In
Thank you,
fact,
Sarah.
the headline is that we didn't have any items come up that are of high concern.
Nope.
It's a second year in a row, and a lot of districts are not in that
Yeah.
situation. And the ratings on whatever issues do occur were kind of escalated down, meaning we had less medium than low, so we're going in the right direction, and overall it was a very strong report.
Yeah.
We should have a lot of confidence in the financial health of the district and how it's being operated.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Diversity and inclusion.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I just wanted to say that our general committee decided that we were going to meet every other month, so that subcommittees had time to meet and work and research. So that being said, our next subcommittee meeting will be next week on Wednesday, December 15th. And also one thing to add, diversity and inclusion has always had a relationship with the Sag Harbor Cinema through our Tough Topics Committee. That's a subcommittee that in the past, pre-COVID, has always looked to preview films that have a broad range of topics that might be considered sensitive or controversial. So all that is to say this, Sag Harbor Cinema has always connected with us to make available complimentary tickets to our population, which is to say students and faculty, like My Octopus Teacher and most recent Citizen 4. So I wanted to thank Sam Hamilton, who's the communication manager at Sag Harbor Cinema. Yesterday, last night, 2 of our 4 student subcommittee members attended Citizen 4, which was a controversial film about government surveillance. The idea of how calls, messages, texts, emails could be or might be monitored. And I say might because nobody's admitting to that. But just to say that our government or governments in other countries around the world could be watching and listening to our conversations, although nothing was confirmed. Anyway, 2 Pearson students attended. I also attended. I told the students that they didn't have to sit with me. They didn't. That's fine. But that's pretty much everything I wanted to share. Again, I just wanted to thank Sag Harbor Cinema for always making those tickets available to our students completely complimentary, which has been wonderful. And also thank them for making available the children matinees that have started every weekend. And that's something that I know we've asked for a while, and even me as a parent. So matinees have started for children, Sag Harbor Elementary School students. And that's something that I think started about 2 months ago. So just wanted to send a shout out to them and say thank you.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much, Betty. Any questions, members of the board for Ms. Reynoso? Okay, great. Public input number
Oh,
2.
I think we have items for discussion. I think Ryan wanted to talk to us about some stuff that he had just been to.
Sure. So we can go to items for discussion. We'll go to Ryan first.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Sure, thanks, Brian. So I just wanted to mention quickly that last Tuesday, I attended a housing forum that was hosted by the East Hampton School District. They were starting, or their goal is to kind of start the discussion on some of the housing challenges that a lot of businesses and schools and local students that are graduating are facing in terms of finding places to live close to where they want to live in the future or are currently working in one of the East End school districts or the hospital or for local business or what have you. And the goal is to kind of put together a committee to come up with some creative solutions to what is quite a daunting problem that is facing the South Fork and other areas of Suffolk County and specifically, but all over the country and a lot of these higher areas that there's pockets of higher priced housing. So at the forum, which was the first of what they're anticipating to be several, they invited local businesses, other school districts, and the general public to come and listen and to speak. So I went on behalf of the Sag Harbor School District. State Assemblyman Fred Deal was there, and he spoke of the Peconic Bay Regional Housing Fund. Supervisor Van Scoyoc was there from the town of East, along with the housing director, Tom Rule. And they went through a bunch of opportunities that potentially could be utilized by, they were talking to East Hampton, but for other school districts in the area and businesses alike, for like the housing fund. And the town is focusing in East Hampton next year on finding creative ways to maybe change the zoning code or provide incentives for alternative housing options that might not currently exist readily in the area. Addition to that, Southampton Hospital Joint Advisory Committee member Jay Levine was there and spoke of a creative approach the hospital was taking to addressing housing, in that they are teamed up with a hedge fund that will kind of front money for down payment up front and allow for people to buy a house that normally they might not be able to, because the bulk of the money up front is where the challenge is with purchasing a house. And then also Habitat for Humanity, Lee Silverman was there talking about opportunities potentially that they could make with the district and or the town to assist local businesses and schools kind of address some of these housing options. So this is going to be an ongoing discussion. They're hoping to get involved and include both politicians, business leaders, people in the industry, to kind of everybody get their heads together and see what can best be come up with as a solution to this. And it is challenging, so I don't think anyone's pretending that there's a silver bullet in there, but just providing some ways to assist people in making it more palatable to live and work out here. So I will, if the board is and the district is supportive, I can continue to kind of monitor and stay on top of this situation. I think it's beneficial for the district to kind of just keep our eyes and ears open for some of this, because obviously we're facing some of the same challenges that everybody else is out here.
Absolutely. Housing is definitely a challenge all around. So I think it'd be a great idea if you could, stay involved in that, Ryan, and keep the board up to date as
Awesome.
things develop. I think it would be very helpful for everybody, and bringing that news to the public as well through these meetings is important.
Yep.
So thank you.
Thanks.
Any other board members, unfinished business or thoughts for next meetings or anything like that? Okay. Hearing no one, we will move on to our
I'm
next
sorry,
session.
Brian, I was trying to unmute. I apologize.
Okay.
At the next meeting, or early January, will we be able to get from the business office the calendar for the budget presentations? It's kind of coming up to that. I mean, I'm sure you're working on it already. I'm just asking. 'cause I'm
Yes,
Anticipating.
Miss Buscemi, if you want, or we could, if you have that
Nope.
answer now, or.
The calendar is actually, we were working on the calendar, and that's one of the reasons why we,
Change the
Um,
calendar tonight.
that
Yeah.
we had to make adjustments to the board calendar tonight because
That's
we were
what I
working on the budget calendar, and that is going to be presented on December 20th, which is our next meeting. And we'll also be presenting the public hearing for the use of the funds to fund the masonry project, also on December 20th.
Fantastic, thanks.
You're welcome.
You got it. I didn't mean to cut you off, Chris. I didn't see you looking for unmute. Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Buscemi. Public input number 2. Is there anybody here from the public? Now would be the time to raise your hand or put your question in the chat room, address your question to the board or Superintendent Nichols, and we can unmute you with your raise of the hand. Mr. Fisher.
No hands raised.
No hands raised. Okay. With that, section 11 of tonight's agenda, I'm going to ask for a motion to convene into a proposed executive session to discuss litigation and contracts. For the public watching, if that motion should carry, the board would then go into executive session, at the conclusion of which we would come out for the sole purpose of just ending the public hearing. We would not take any action, so you will not miss any part of the meeting or action by the board. With that, is there a motion to convene into executive session for the purposes of discussing litigation and/or contracts?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Mary?
Okay, I opened it up. That's unanimous.
Thank you so much. From the members of the public, have a good meeting. Administration and staff, have a good evening. Those invited to executive session, there is a link in your inbox, and we'll see you shortly.
Good
Have a good
night,
night.
everyone.
Night, everybody.
Evening.